Hello there, sword friends. Today I'm going to do the AMA question answer video thing that I mentioned I would do about a month ago, which seems to actually be working out pretty well. This periodically ask questions AMA YouTube community tab and then respond to the stuff in there seems to work out well. So I'll do that. If you're interested in having me answer a question, keep an eye out for me posting in the community tab again. Then I'm going to do one of these videos, and then you'll be able to ask your question. It looks like I left it open this time for about a month, which is ample time, and it looks like 20 folks posted questions there. So without further ado, I'm going to read them and then try to answer them. And here we go. So Sword Friend Shane. Hello, Matthew. Is there a favorite sword fight / martial arts fight from a movie that you would be willing to tell us about, and why it is your favorite? There's probably the fight between Wesley and Inigo Montoya and the Princess Bride. That's a tough question to answer off the cuff. There's a lot of sword fights that have influenced me as a kid and that I certainly enjoy, but as there's one that I kind of keep coming back to, where that I've actually tried to pause and go frame by frame and see if I could identify like some of the movements and things like that in the choreography. That one is the one, I suppose, that comes to mind. I'm not making any claim that it's the best or the only or the one to beat, but that one is, I suppose, what sticks in my mind is probably my favorite sword fight. The movie was awesome, by the way. Princess Bride, probably my favorite movie, at least as I say favorite movie. I'm defining that as a movie that anytime it's on, I can watch and be entertained regardless of circumstances or my age. I remember watching that movie when I was like 5 or something years old. I don't know how old I was, but I was really young when that movie came out. I watched it, I loved it, and now I'm on the wrong end of 30, and I still absolutely love that movie. I love watching it with my family, and so it's a great movie. Anyway, that wasn't the question, but I think I answered it. There we go. Swordfriend Darth, do you have any experience with the colored blades you can get from places like Swords of Northshire, Hanbon Forge, and a few others on Cult of Athena, typically listed as acid dipped or anodized, or more commonly electroplated? If so, what are your thoughts on this optional step? Do you have any experience putting forced patinas on your blade? I don't have any experience doing it myself, so short answer there is no. I don't have any experience actually putting a patina on. All the patina I put on blades is completely inadvertent, and I try my best to not put patina on blades, with the exception of maybe Nakago on katana or something like that. And that you get just from handling the blade. Generally speaking, as I think about, if I think I understand what you're saying, the weird kind of colors, there's a bunch of different colors that you can get out there. And the only kind of hands-on experience I have outside of, say, some sort of patina or etching on a Zombie Tools blade or something like that is, I have a Ronin Katana RK, some kind of dark Michonne style looking zombie killer katana, and it has a kind of blackened style blade that doesn't look blued in the same way a blade might be blued. So it's not bad, but they tend to diminish as much as any other polish, and they stand out a little bit more if you're using them. So I don't necessarily, I don't know. To me, they seem kind of cheap and gimmicky, but supposedly you can get them on relatively, I don't know about expensive blades, but you can get them on blades that are functional, and I haven't necessarily seen them degrade the functionality of swords. So if it floats your boat, then have at it. To me personally, I don't necessarily like the look so much. They tend to obscure some of the details that I'm really trying to enjoy in the sword. But hell, maybe they bring it out. I guess I'd have to see, because there's probably some high-end stuff that does it too. It's just not coming to mind. Most of the time when I think of like the kind of goofy red, blue, green colored blades and stuff like that, they come in, the first connotation I get is kind of gimmicky. But in practice, the one that I swung around from Ronin didn't chip, bend. It was a fine feeling sword. It just that the patina would come off, or the plating would come off a little bit. I almost equate it to like dyed concrete or something like that. Like it can add an interesting maybe aesthetic, but it's only kind of surface deep, and when it scratches, the other colors of the blade come through, and it maybe becomes even more noticeable. Anyway, hopefully that answers your question. Swordfriend Roger, where are the best places to find and or the cheapest tatami mats available? Nihonzashi, Cult of Athena, Those are the only places that really come to mind. I'm really lucky in that I buy the mats that I get from the dojo where I go. I think people there buy in bulk, or I don't know exactly what they do, but they get a lot of tatami mats, and I've always gotten them from them. And well, not always. There was a martial arts store that sold beach mats, but it's since closed, so I can't get it there anymore. The only places I really know of are like Cult of Athena or Nihonzashi out of Florida. I'm kind of surprised that Cult of Athena hasn't found like a really inexpensive source for tatami mats. The price on those things is going up, and it's like at like $5 or $10 a mat. All right, oh, shut down, engaged. At $5 or $10 a mat, it's not. It's tough. It's becoming an even more expensive hobby. So, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of great examples there. But there are different targets to cut if you're so inclined to do it. If it has to be tatami, then those are the only two places I really know to get them in bulk. Sword friend Ed, I like to see how you use the weapon calculator. That might be a subject for another video. I don't know that I could really sum it up. Thomas Riley at Medieval Review has done a weapon dynamics computer video about plugging stuff in. Robert McCarter has done, I think I'm saying his name right, he's done videos on how to do it. John Andresen has had a video out. I don't think he has it posted anymore, but anyway, there's been some. It's a long-winded thing, but I think the maybe the easiest explanation is the one that's out there in Medieval Review. It's probably a few years old right now, but it walks through kind of the calculations, and it's probably going to explain it better than I can. Generally speaking, it's just you have to learn like where you're measuring to, and then you can get on a good clip for it. Explaining how to use it, I don't know that I can take time to do that. What I have learned that saved me a little bit of time is silver Sharpie. I have to clean the blades after I handle them so much for measuring and stuff like that, and to wiggle them around. I've been encouraged to use a period-based test instead of the waggle test, which is one where you kind of move it around and try to see the nodes, and it can be a pain in the butt. And supposedly there's an easier way to do it, and I just haven't tried, and I'm probably dumb for that. But silver Sharpie has actually saved me in kind of marking where things are in points of balance, and I leave that on the blade, and it doesn't seem to mar the blades, and I have to clean them off with oil, and the oil tends to rub off the Sharpie anyway. So not your question, but just word of the wise, I use a silver Sharpie on the blade, and it rubs off, and I haven't had any problems doing that to like nodes and points of balance and stuff like that. It's also really helped as I'm trying to find the nodes. I make like a little ruler and draw it on the blade, and it kind of helps my eye track into where nodes and things like that are a little bit more accurately. So that's kind of step C, and you're asking for A, I realize. But anyway, hopefully that's at least some food for thought. I might make a video about it later, but I don't know. I think there's probably better stuff out there. But hell, maybe. I have plenty of swords to measure. Not a bad idea. Sword friend, real big fan. I'm sure it's been touched on before, but I would be curious to hear your thoughts on various mediums for backyard cutting, pros and cons. Also would be interested in any non-sword weapons you currently own. And here you ramble a bit about other historic weapons that might interest you. Honestly, all of them interest me. Anything sharp, shiny, pointy, weapon-related, blunt, sharp. Though I mean, I certainly have an affinity for swords, but just about all of them are really, really interesting to me. So yeah, I have interest. I just tend to ramble more about swords. I think there's probably, as I look at things like pole arms and staves and things like that, it seems like there's probably less people practicing with them or collecting them than there are swords, which tend to have a pretty strong following in the realm of collection. So that's why I tend to focus on them, and where I feel like I can frankly contribute and help the most. In terms of cutting backyard targets, that can get long-winded, which I'm not usually afraid to do, but in the interest of time, tatami mats are great. I think that kind of goes without saying. They're just really expensive. Pool noodles, paper. Honestly, like the main thing I could advocate is really anything that you can get inexpensively and have readily available. Rolled up newspaper can be a great medium to cut. Even hung newspaper, just kind of flat. You can do lots of kind of target cutting. It's messy, but less so, I would say, than water bottles, and equally can show you about edge alignment and some other important facets in your martial arts. and so there are a lot of different targets. Pool noodle, like I think they all certainly have their place. It's just really a matter of cost and like cleanup and what you can do effectively. I really like pool noodles. They I don't think they get necessarily enough credit, but they're easy to clean up. They don't make a huge mess, and they're relatively inexpensive. I get them at the dollar store, and I haven't gone in a couple of years, but I would just go buy a box of 50, and then and then gradually work through them. But at $1 a pool noodle, I feel like there's stuff to be done there, and there's something you can garner. Water bottles, paper bottles as well, like milk jugs and things like that have been pretty good. Water bottles have bit me a few times. They've chipped a few swords that wouldn't otherwise be chipped on like a cardboard or corrugate or something like that, because they tend to hit the kind of the neck of them where it's pretty thick and in testing a lot of swords. So cautionary tales there, but honestly, like there's a bunch of stuff that you could do. If you have access to linen or materials, you could roll that up around a green sapling and cut that. There's a lot of different mediums, and really to me it comes down to like what can you afford to play with, you know. At $10 a tatami mat after shipping, like the average cost, it's tough to justify doing 3 bad cuts, and you know, it's a very costly thing. So that's, I suppose, the question. And there's a lot of mediums and things that I can't necessarily speak for all of them, but to me, like newspapers, bottles, pool noodles tend to be the most cost-effective things because that's what I have available. Saplings, green bamboo, if you have access to it. To me, in my climate, saplings and things like that are about as good as I can get, but I have to be cognizant of going out in the woods and, you know, chopping down trees and stuff like that. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question. If you have any ideas on stuff you can cut that's cheap, let me know. I'm certainly interested. All right, Sword Friend Cody. Must admit, I like your videos. Thank you very much, sir. Very informative. My question is this: in your opinion, which is stronger, higher endurance, edge keeping katana, 1095, clay tempered, or B, T10 differentially hardened clay tempered blade, or C, 1055, 1060 clay tempered? Well, if you're going clay tempered all the way around, endurance wise, I would go with a through hardened blade, but probably the T10 or 1095. I mean, any of those are honestly pretty durable blades, all in all. And I don't know that I've necessarily spotted a difference between any of them. 1095 has theoretically more carbon content, and it's probably easier to fuck up. I haven't had too many blades that are T10 and gone screwy, but I've had some 1095 differentially hardened blades that were too hard and broke easier than their through hardened counterparts, or than a differentially hardened 1060 blade. I would probably go with like a 1060, honestly. T10, not that it's bad, but all things being equal, then I would probably say T10 or 1095 is better. Unfortunately, all things aren't equal. It's my personal opinion, kind of personal thought through hands-on and observation, that it seems like Chinese smiths that are working in the forges that mostly were acquiring these kind of budget-ended katanas from are very familiar and seem to know how to work with like a 1060 blade and that material with the tools that they're using or the knowledge that they have or whatever you want to call it, that they tend to yield more consistent results with that blade. So I honestly really advocate getting a 1060 blade. I know it's usually less expensive, but I've been pretty happy with that material, and it seems like the folks that are making it know how to well, the consistency and really unleashing the potential of that particular material, or at least getting closer to it. That would be what I would say. Not that the others don't have some inherent benefit over 1060, but I've been just very happy with some of the 1060 blades that I've gotten. Hopefully that answers your question. If all things were equal and you a competent smith with the ability to and familiarity and tools to work with any of those, I would guess T10, but I'm not really qualified to answer which one would be better, but that would be my guess. All right, Sword Friend Kenneth. Perhaps you might ramble a bit about rust management, and whether you've had trouble in regard with some steels more than others. I have had trouble with some more than others, and it's primarily the Albion swords. Don't know what it is, but obviously I leave them out in the open, but I leave other swords out in the open as well, and the Albions by far tend to rust easier and more consistently and be harder to keep up, and I have to be pretty diligent with cleaning regimens related to the Albions that sit out. Other than that, L6 blades probably would be the ones I've had a couple sneaky bits of rust pop up on L6 blades that I did not want. Other than that, that's really it. I use break-free CLP, and I basically once every 1 to 6 months I go through all the swords and I wipe them down and I reapply break-free, depending on if I've used them. Every time I use them, I also clean them, but if I haven't and they're just sitting there, then I try to do it at a maximum every 6 months. And the blades that I know that are sticklers, like the Albions, usually get a little bit, like once a month or something like that. I'll take them down. Generally, I handle them more than that, so like they kind of get that treatment anyway. But that's it. I break free on a shop cloth, and I apply it, and I kind of try to do them in bulk in like 10 at a time or something like that. And I just make sure to keep up and make sure I apply oil to all the guards. But the Albions, I don't know if it's the set and finish or what it is, but those tend to be the most problematic in terms of keeping them rust free. Those blades are sneaky. Sword friend Gutberg. Hopefully I'm saying that nice. Right. What katana sword websites do you order from? Which do you steer clear from? Thanks. I don't generally order from much other than eBay or Facebook or Craigslist or something like that. I buy a ton of stuff secondhand, and that's, I've mentioned that in other videos, but I think that's the most cost-effective way to get swords. You can also get burned, but I've had a lot of good luck. I buy from forums and Facebook groups and things like that, and so that's generally where I tend to find swords. There's some knowledge that has to be gained before maybe you might be comfortable doing that, and I can certainly understand why. But otherwise, Cult of Athena seems to be a pretty trustworthy site. It's not as though they have, 100% support from everyone that's bought from them, but generally speaking, I hear more positive than I do negative. I guess that's the main one that comes to mind. Things to steer clear from. I don't know of any necessarily that are inherently, just direct ripoffs. I would say maybe steer clear of the manufacturer's website themselves, at least in a lot of the mass production swords, whether it be Cast Iberia or Cold Steel or whatever, what have you. Their website advertises at the MSRP, and they often sell to distributors at a significant reduction in price, and then those distributors will sell it online at a usually below MSRP, not always, but generally below MSRP. And so you can often find them from like a Cult of Athena less expensive than you can from like a Cold Steel Direct or a Cast Iberia Direct. I don't think, like, to me, when you say like what to steer clear from, to me that says when am I going to order a sword and then not get it back? And there are some cautionary tales whenever you're dealing with like a Facebook or an eBay or a Craigslist or something like that. But generally speaking, if you order from Cast Iberia or Cold Steel, you're going to get a sword out the other end, but it'll be at a higher price. Anyway, hope that answers your question. Sword friend Alan, have you tried Yarano Hanzo swords? I have 4 of them, and they do a good job. Good custom shop versions as well. 2 steel types and fittings, etc. I have not had a Yarano Hanzo sword. I did email them some time ago. I've been asked a few times about Yarano Hanzo, and I don't have any first-hand experience. I can tell you that it seems more positive than negative based on the reviews and feedback that I've seen, but I don't have any first-hand experience, and if I can get a sample somewhere, I'd be happy to review one. I'm not in the market to buy one for myself at the moment, but the only thing I've heard is generally positive stuff. So that's about all I can tell you, though. Hopefully I hear back about a review sample or get a chance either to pick one up secondhand at a reasonable rate or something like that, and maybe in the future I'll have a review. I just don't have any plans to do it just yet. Surgeon Dan, I'm buying my first real katana. I've been practicing with Iaito for a while now. I've narrowed down to the Ronin Katana around the $300 level. Is there another brand I should look at a similar price point, using for backyard cutting and practice, but also want something durable? So if you're doing Iaito, there's just other facets of the sword that are important for cutting, and if you're drawing and all of that kind of stuff, then I would say the Skyjiro and Huawei were the two brands that might have something in the $300 price point that tended to draw and sheathe and have a feel kind of in the hand that was pleasant to use for Iaito. The Ronin Katanas, the RK inexpensive ones were actually pretty, the cheapo one that I got not too long ago was actually really pleasant for, at least for the money, to use for Iaito. But generally speaking, if you're going to practice Iaito, then you're looking for more than just a durable sword, because it kind of has to, all the fit has to work with the martial art you're doing, and there's just, the blade being durable is only 50% or less of the equation to the other stuff you might be doing with it. So those are the two, Skyjiro, Huawei. Skyjiro I've heard some mixed stuff about ordering from. Some people are getting blades, some people are waiting a long time. But if you see one off the shelf that fits your needs, I've been pretty happy with their stuff. And I only had one Huawei blade recently to review that sword friend Scott sent me not too long ago. But I was pretty impressed with it for the money, and I think it's a little more than $300. I haven't tested any of the less expensive ones, but either of those tended to draw and sheathe and kind of fit together a little bit better than some of the Ronin Dojo Pros, which are the $300 iterations. Though, in fairness, I haven't played with the Ronin Dojo Pro in some time, and usually the ones that I got were factory seconds. So, I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea, but those would be for an Iaito and a practitioner standpoint. I don't think they're more durable. I don't know that there's a more durable sword for $300 than the Ronin Dojo Pro. So I think back in all of my testing, some of those swords took a lot of bashing to break. I haven't tried one in a while, and I think I got a little bit better at breaking swords, but some of those gave me a lot of a lot of challenge to break. Anyway, for what it's worth, those would be the other facets that I'd say consider. They don't help with durability though, and if that's the sole thing you're after, I think a Ronin Dojo Pro is a good sword. A 1060 through hardened sword has been historically, that's part of the reason I have the perception I do about that steel, is those Ronin Dojo Pros being made out of 1060. Some of those were the hardest sons of bitches to break that I've tried, at least katana wise to break, and that, yeah, they did a pretty good job making a durable sword. It's a bit stout, but pretty solid swords. All right, Steel Forge and Fire enthusiast. Hey Joe, Matt, out of production katana lines you have experienced, which are the most reliable in terms of fit and finish, of all the pieces fitting together correctly? Manufacturers from moderate to high price. Joe Swords, but yeah, well, the ones that fit together the best, Motohara Evolution blades kind of unequivocally has been the best fit. It's also really, really expensive. I mean, it wouldn't be hard to get a $3,000 blade out of them with some of the custom touches that you want. But I've held a few of them now, and I've been really satisfied with the fit and finish of all of them. How they draw, how they sheath, how they, at least in terms of practicing and how the sword is supposed to fit together. They're not exactly a mass production, but I guess they are. They're more of a made to order, small batch kind of thing, at least from what I can tell. But I would say they do the best job. Citadel is a little behind. They have a little bit more handmade touch in some of the fittings, but the fittings aren't necessarily overly crazy in terms of beauty, and some of the polish work and the swords that I've seen at about the same price point as a Motohara Evolution blades haven't really been as impressive. So I've also had a little bit of binding in the scabbards from from Citadel, and not necessarily in a bad way. Before Motohara Evolution blade came out, I would say that Citadel would have been the ones that got it to fit together the best. But yeah, those two are towards the top. Then I would say Skyjiro. I've had some really good blades from Skyjiro. I've also had some expensive blades from Skyjiro that did not fit together particularly well. But the Kumo and below, like the $1,200 and below lines, I thought felt pretty good. There was a special edition sword that was thousands of dollars, and I did not think it was particularly special. But some of the other less expensive offerings that are more common, I thought fit together actually pretty well, but not at the same level as Citadel, not at the same level as Motohara. But those would be the three that I think tend to check more of the boxes than miss. Huawei would be the other manufacturer, but I've only seen one sword. I've seen, maybe a dozen from Skydro. I've seen, a handful from Citadel, and probably a handful from Motohara, and so I have some sample of the others. I've really only seen one Huawei recently, and then like 8 or 9 years ago, I saw a couple others, and I think they seem to also do pretty well. But I need to see a couple more. Generally speaking, though, that would be the other kind of less expensive one. I went top to bottom, I think, in terms of price point. Motohara, Citadel, Skydro, Huawei, those would be, in terms of fit and finish, the people that I would say are in the running. And price-wise, I went top to bottom, I think. But Citadel and Motohara can probably rival each other in terms of price and options. You might, Citadel can do some folded stuff, but I don't know that you can get it in the U.S. I'm rambling, but I suppose that's what you're tuning in for. Anyway, hopefully that answered the question. Swordfriend Brotherman. Hey Matt, would you consider doing a compare and contrast style video in regards to cutting? For example, you've reviewed many models, but I've not seen you do many where you compare the cutting results of one model to another. For example, footage used in the Hanwei bamboo mat in contrast to your evolution blade. It's a good call. I'm hesitant to do that because one might infer that one cut better than the other, and there's a lot of variables that are tough for me to isolate, and the biggest one is myself. And so my aptitude at cutting, I could certainly ramble about it, but I put enough disclaimers in that it's something I could probably do. If you'd find it worthwhile, I could probably do something like that. Yeah, I haven't thought about doing it just because of the tangible benefit I think would be muddied by my poor practicing, but it's something I could certainly look at doing if you'd find value in it. So let me know if there's something that would be good to contrast. But evolution blade to other things, I could probably do something like that. Swordfriend John, I was wondering if you have heard of Wolfland Armory based in the Czech Republic. I bought an amazing longsword from their Etsy page. Very well balanced. Most are theatric props, but can be sharpened. Seeing if there's a ramble in I haven't heard of them before. Generally speaking, in terms of reviewing, I'm happy to review anything. I'm not always happy to buy stuff. So I keep an eye on things in the second-hand market, and I did not know that this manufacturer existed. If I saw one secondhand at a good rate, at a rate that I feel like I could pretty easily get my money back out of it without losing much, then that'd be something I would look at. But generally speaking, I'm actually, because I'm making videos so slow, I'm not looking at buying as many things either. Anyway, generally speaking, I'm happy to make a review on anything. If I got a sample or someone lent me one, that would be something I'd totally be happy to do. I do also actually want to point out, now that I touched on that, people have been lending me swords a lot more lately, and it's wonderful, and I love it. I love that people trust me with their property. I'm humbled by it, but it also I want to respect people's time and property and things like that, and it makes me nervous having too much stuff around. So I'm a bit behind at the moment, but in the future, if somebody had one that they'd like to lend me, or if the manufacturer sent me a review sample, happy to do a review. At the moment, I don't have a plan to do a review on them, but it's not that I would mind doing it. All right, Swordfriend Weapon Man. Would you consider making a more human-like target, maybe cut through clothing more to simulate what different swords will actually be doing to an opponent? Also, I like the idea of testing rushed cuts with poor technique. Well, I have that to spare. And more realistic fights strike attempt. I kind of feel like the tool has to be used absolutely perfectly. If the tool has to be used absolutely perfectly, then it's not quite as good as a tool that does not require the use to be perfect. I agree. Hopefully, it's not necessarily fair to look at videos that I did 5 years ago and compare them to videos that I do now, if you're contrasting the cutting, because I think I've gotten marginally better, though I do tend to turn into Hulk smash when I go bash things. But imperfect strikes are pretty much all the strikes that I put out there. And Yeah, I totally agree. Though some certainly can be more user friendly, and that is a facet of a tool that can be very valuable. Human targets, to answer your question, I'm somewhat loath to do that. One, because they're expensive and time consuming to make. I see, and I've read up a little bit on using ballistics gel, and I've seen Thane Thrand. He's done like a human torso target with PVC piping and things like that. But honestly, like it's tough to do, and I haven't cut into something like that, and I don't know how helpful it is. It's probably entertaining, and it might be worthwhile to see what it would do on a human target. But generally speaking, it's tough to compare and contrast. There's like a lot of people have cut a bottle or a pool noodle or maybe a tatami mat, but not a lot of people have cut into a target like that. So I mean, if I did both, then I suppose it'd be helpful. It's really that, one, I'm not sure how friendly YouTube is going to be to human targets in the future. It seems like that might be shaky water in the future. And if I avoid it, then it's easier to say that it's all in good fun. And two, it's a pain in the ass. Making ballistics gel and buying it and keeping it at temperature and molding it, and apparently it smells. I don't know if it's something that I want to do. It would be really cool to cut a couple times. I'm kind of interested in it for that, but I don't know about a long-term target on the channel. I guess I have to do it first. I've been really lazy about it. There's a lot of excuses to say I'm really lazy and haven't tried making one. But yes, I've thought about it, but hopefully logic. If you have any resources or something that you know about making an easy target or something that I could upkeep and work with easily, let me know. I'm really lazy. Sword from John. Have you considered growing bamboo for material to cut? Is cutting bamboo even a thing? Cutting bamboo is totally a thing. Bamboo is a great target. It just doesn't grow particularly well where I live. I live in Minnesota. It gets really cold, and I guess it's zone 4. I think when I was looking at bamboo, that's what comes to mind. And all the bamboo that I've seen growing in Minnesota tends to be kind of thin reed stuff rather than the kind of larger, thick stuff. We do have like green saplings and stuff that get to be an inch or two thick, and those can be not quite like green bamboo, but similar in terms of cutting targets. And those are readily available in the forests around me and in people's yards and that kind of stuff. Not that I go into people's yards and cut down their trees, but I'm just saying that that's about the only type of thing that I can find, and some of them, branches and things like that are about as close as I can get. But I would totally grow bamboo if I could. Just, I guess, doesn't grow too well here. Sword friend Michael. 2 things. Do you have any experience or have you heard anything about custom swords from Hanbon Forge? They seem to offer everything from Swords of Northshire that Swords of Northshire does, but for like 25% less. I'm thinking about, you thinking about getting a sword. I've heard of Hanbon Forge. I can't say that I have any really relevant experience. I want to say I've seen them. I might have owned some, but I honestly, I don't recall. I haven't had a recent example, certainly. I've watched videos from other YouTubers that have had swords from Hanbon Forge, and they seem to be happy with them. It looks like they miss many of the same things and check many of the same boxes that other swords do, and if you can get it for less, that's great. Generally speaking, I have had experience with Swords of Northshire and Jakku, and the price point seems to be very similar in terms of the disparity. Swords of Northshire isn't making something, but they do offer a service, and I would say, generally speaking, with Swords of Northshire, they were pretty on the ball about getting me the oddball requests that I had for the project that I put out there. And I asked for stupid things that are hard to make that they wouldn't have laying around, and they produced them pretty accurately. And the service and communication were good, and that cost money. And so I think that's what you get, and that's the value rather than necessarily the product itself. You might pay a little bit more, but the service you get might be a little bit better. And if that's a value, there you go. And if it's not, then there are thriftier places to buy similar products. So anyway, not a surprise, but I haven't had one from Hanbon in particular. 2, would you go with a clay temper 1095 blade or a 9260 regular blade? I assume you mean through hardened. Again, we'll be thinking about what is offered from Hanbon. Depending on what you're after, I would probably go with a through hardened blade over. You can get through hardened in either case, but I would prefer a through hardened blade for most tasks. to a clay tempered blade unless there's something aesthetically about it or something like that. But if you're going for durability and performance, then I would generally prefer a through hardened blade for most tasks. Update. I heard from Yao at Hanbon Forge. We had extensive back and forth, finalized my order for much less, about 40% less than what swords in Northshire. 277 versus 466. Besides the custom engraving fitting, I don't necessarily think you're getting 40% less quality. What seems to happen though in some of the custom orders, and I'm kind of speaking generally, but in some of the reviews and things like that I've read, there's been miscommunications and things like that, and what the intent was, and also getting the order right and meeting your expectations right out of the box without having to go back or complain or be compensated for something that was missed or send the sword back or something like that. Not that happens with every example in Jayco or some other place outside Swords of Northshire, but generally speaking, it seems like you what you order and what arrives at your door tends to have, or it seems to me anyway, that the hit rate on that happening is higher with Swords of Northshire than some others. But so is the cost, and so that's kind of how it goes. What is it? You can have quality and speed and service, and you can pick two. No, quality, price. So I don't know. I got lost. My analogy got lost there. But generally speaking, higher service levels cost money. That was the main point. It's getting late here. I should stop trying to make supply chain analogies while I'm tired. All right, I'm not going to read everything that Sword Scylla said, and hopefully I'm saying your name right, sir. It seems like you're pretty pissed off at katanasforsale.com, and unfortunately, I've never heard about them. Frankly, I've never researched them or read them, and it would be probably not appropriate for me to really comment without doing some research or talking to them or something like that. But it seems like you have had a pretty bad experience, and I can transition that to the market a little bit and maybe give some advice on what you could do to hopefully have something at your door that you're happy with. It's not that I'm not trying to blame you for buying a product and being unhappy with it, but if I set that aside and try to give you some advice to prevent it from happening again, one would be secondhand. So if you buy from a secondhand seller, ping them, ask them for detailed photos, ask them for a video conversation or something like that where you can see the product and get as close to a hands-on view of the product as possible, and that will hopefully give you a better sense of what you're going to get in the mail, because the thing you're getting photos of or the thing that you're seeing in a video is the thing that you will inevitably hold in your hand, which is hopefully going to yield better results than giving somebody your money, waiting for a custom project to happen, and after months, being surprised by big claims and that were kind of empty promises, so to speak. The other thing is there are some vendors that are trusted, and I don't mean like Cult of Athena, but if you go and spend the big bucks, like if I were to order a blade from Evolution Blades, Motohara, it wouldn't be surprising that if I gave them $3,000 to make me a sword, I'd expect a certain level of quality out of it, and I'd have some faith that kind of quality would be what I would get in the mail, and that the instructions and the promises and the kind of overall idea would be kind of nipped and tucked, and that would be pretty close, that the expectation and execution would be very, very close together. And that's unfortunately not always the case with the less expensive products out there, but sometimes it is. People have gotten custom blades from like Huawei and been pretty happy with them. I don't know if they've been happy with the wait time, but they've been usually happy with the result. Anyway, secondhand would be my advice, because then you can see the actual product that you're getting, hopefully. And if somebody doesn't want to do that, doesn't want to send you photos, then move on to the next one. Take a look. Not everyone's going to be willing to do it, but generally speaking, people have been pretty happy to provide additional data to me, and you get a chance to see the product you're getting and hear from the person that's held it and such. So that might be helpful. Hopefully, that's at least the best advice I can give. Anyway, that's kind of a somber note to end on, but those are all the questions I've gotten. As always, sword friends, cheers, and thanks for watching.